third picture in a franchise, there are several things that you can do to make it more fun, make it bigger, make it better.
Big, crazy, I mean, it's everything.
It's a big, big logistical nightmare.
This is like number 1 and number 2 combined, with the effects, with the stunts, with the multiple states, the multiple locations, the traveling circus. I don't think I'd have it any other way.
It's like nothing you've ever seen, you know? It's really crazy.
They must be thinking, is that big enough? Maybe that's not big enough. We gotta go bigger. We gotta think bigger.
I've never been challenged like this in my life, and I can't honestly say that I think I ever would have been had I continued going the way I was.
Everything's much better in this movie. It feels magical. I think we've learned from the first two. This time we worked our butts off to make this the best of the three.
Transformers!
I think the reaction to the second movie played a large part in the development of the third movie. Michael was very aware, as was the studio and Lorenzo. Everyone was aware that the reaction to number 2 was not as favorable as it had been to number 1.
The second movie was just sort of like a lot of second movies. It's an introduction of new characters. You know, how do we keep this exciting? How do we keep the discovery? New people, new faces. But we overdid that. I think there was too many new characters to pay off, and we didn't have the time.
Oh, I'm thrilled. Oh, I'm sorry, Transformers 2.
Was I proud of the movie? Yeah, there are things that are great in the movie, the things that are fun. It wasn't my best movie. I knew we could have done better. We were slogging through the ending. It got sloppy, and that's just because it's too little writing time. The movie was written during a writer's strike. The strike happened, we're still prepping the movie, and I said, we're already into this. It's not the best way, this is totally not the way to do a movie. I would never recommend it again, but we're gonna get this movie going, hell or high water.
Some of the flaws in it can be traced to the guild strike and not having enough time to really develop a story that might get to a deeper character level. But I think that movie came out of criticism of the first that, wow, these robots are so amazing, and what you can do with the effects are so amazing. We wanted to see so much more of that. And so I think the design of Revenge of the Fallen became about spectacle first, as opposed to starting with a stronger narrative through line and finding the action scenes that would fit that.
You know, it was a yeoman's effort, I guess, for being under the circumstances.
Michael wasn't sure that he wanted to make a third movie. He wasn't sure, certainly, that he wanted to jump into it right away.
Michael first thought he'd take a break between Transformers 2 and Transformers 3. Go off, do a little movie or something. But he realized that you might lose some of your key crew. And Michael Bay is a very loyal person, above and beyond everything, which is pretty cool. And once he has a team assembled, he's got people he's worked with for years. He loves working with the same people. I certainly enjoy working with him, and he realized we probably should roll into the next movie and keep all the same team so we know what we're doing and build upon what we already know.
What we did first was design robots. Dozens of robots, literally. Some got facelifts, some got new weapons, some got new armaments. That was the priority. So the marching orders were get these robots together and get going.
One of the nice things about the evolution of this franchise is that with each successive movie, we've had more liberty to create characters for the robots.
On the second one, what we ended up doing was, venturing into more personality-driven robots and also into more unique anatomy. And on the third one, I'd say it probably just kind of continued along the same lines in that we've now transitioned fully into kind of a creature realm of organic motion and organic design, but still within our Transformers kind of mechanical language of materials and shapes and all that sort of stuff. And then I would say that on the third, we went even more into specific kind of characterization, personality explorations. We'd done some of that on the second, but on the third, it was even more so.
I think we wanted to introduce some exciting new Autobot and Decepticon characters, but only a few, so that we really got to know them as characters, and they each got their moments to really register and make an impression. In previous movies, Bumblebee was Sam's guardian first and foremost. And in this movie, we felt like Bumblebee should graduate from that role. So we wanted Bumblebee to be one of the fighting ranks. He's gone from kind of up-and-coming member of the Autobots to a real leader of the Autobots.
He had sort of cosmetic changes to the car that would then influence and show up in the robot in subtle ways. But, as fundamentally his face and all the things that really make him identifiable haven't changed.
The car was the same for the first two movies. And we just needed to freshen it, update it a little bit, use the newer model, incorporate a lot of GM's new ideas to get just a fresher, sharper car. In this movie, Optimus now has a trailer.
It's a 53-foot Great Dane refrigerated trailer. It's just the most beautiful semi-trailer, if there was a beautiful semi-trailer, which turns into some type of flying apparatus.
We had a power-up idea on the second one, that when the SR-71 character dies, he sort of, or sacrifices himself, he takes on a lot of that guy's actual body matter, which if you think of it in literal human terms is kind of disgusting. But he takes his power and his paneling and all this kind of stuff and turns himself into a flying, powered-up Optimus. Maybe that idea was lingering in Michael's mind and other people's minds for the third one was, let's do it again, a power-up Optimus, but let's, number one, explain, whatever happened with the trailer from the original series, let's do something with that, and number two, the idea of Uber Optimus is just cool.
The concept Corvette that we have is so cool looking. It's definitely a Corvette, and yet it feels completely different.
It's essentially the same car as the second film, but the second film, it was a hardtop. We sent it back to GM and cut the top of it and made it the roadster that it is today. He is Enzo, as in Enzo Ferrari.
Early on, Enzo was sort of modeled on a character from the mythology called Mirage. And in an early draft of the script, he had some powers of invisibility, ability to cloak other objects. And as we pulled those out, we left the Mirage sort of name behind. But in that case, it was really important to Michael that this character have the personality of a Ferrari. So we really wanted that car in the movie. So we gave him an Italian accent and an Italian name. Q was initially modeled on a character from the mythology named Wheeljack, who was an inventor and a technical specialist.
Initially, it was sort of, okay, it's Q from James Bond, sort of, and he's going to be an old Rolls Royce. It's like, okay, that's cool. So I've got like a little retro vibe to play with. Maybe if he's I remember Q being kind of tall and scrawny in the old movies, and so, maybe he's a slightly bumbling kind of, character. And the first take I did on it, Michael, rightly so, said, that's a Pixar design. That's not our movie. Like that, it's too cartoony and it's too kind of cute, and I don't like it. Then sort of a mandate came down, honestly, I think it was from Spielberg, why don't you make him look like Albert Einstein? Literally.
The Wreckers are 3 new vehicles. The interesting thing is they're partially transformed and they're equipped with Gatling guns.
I just think they're the coolest invention ever. I mean, race cars with guns? What more could a boy ask for? I don't even know how to call them. They're not cars, though. They're war machines. They're speed war machines, Combining sheer firepower and speed, how cool is that?
In the mythology, they had very mercenary personality to them and couldn't always be trusted, but ultimately would show up and get the job done. So for the movie rendition of them, we saw them as a pit crew, and thus the NASCAR disguises and the brash kind of rough and tumble attitudes.
That was a neat attempt to do a real mashup of alien aesthetics with hardcore nuts and bolts, NASCAR, space frames and all the cool stuff that's underneath those cars. I felt like that was an example of where we, rather than a new Transformer thing that was kind of, harsh and kind of spiny and threatening and all that sort of thing, it was actually a fun, kind of colorful take on robots. Megatron has fallen on horribly hard times in our movie, and it's almost sad to see the bad guy, laid so low as that. As much as he's a terrible guy, you almost hate to see him like that.
We just wanted to make him kind of pathetic, ugly. That's why we had the sheet, the cloak with his ripped off face, trying to plan his sinister little plan.
He's taken on a very earthy, organic kind of tone in terms of the truck vehicle and his venue when we see him in Africa and all that. So that was a new thing to explore.
Shockwave was a big deal in the Transformers mythology. He was a character who had remained on Cybertron for the Decepticons and was leading the battalions there. He really represents kind of brute force and military tactics. And what we wanted for the movie, and we chose Shockwave to represent it, was a character that as soon as he appeared on screen, you knew he was a fearsome foil for Optimus. When Michael and I first started discussing how to present Shockwave, I pitched in the notion of a steed or a mount, kind of a horse for Shockwave, as if he could enter with this chariot. And for story purposes, we needed something that would tunnel underground to reach this engine part in the Chernobyl sequence. So I pitched this driller idea as a snake or a worm, and it was fairly straightforward.
It took us a while to figure out what the driller was exactly in relationship to Shockwave. I mean, it was clearly a vehicle, but at the same time, it's its own entity on some level, and the way that he drives it, is he sitting in a cockpit, or is he more like Spartacus on a chariot? There were different kinds of postures and relationships to him. I mean, at one point, it was almost as if is the driller a bunch of almost independent worm entities that he has lashed together with a kind of a saddle or a harness, if you will, and he's kind of riding them. Is he riding worms on some level? So that, ultimately it ended up being more like a cockpit, I would say, but there were still some visual elements that suggested kind of a riding-like sort of way of using your hands.
What I pitched is basically a straightforward drilling snake, but of course in true Michael Bay fashion. Once it went through his imagination and the artist at ILM, became this multi-tendrilled hydra of a huge thing the size of 3 city blocks. And the first time he showed me the visuals for that, I said, oh yeah, that'll work. The Dreads were characters that Michael brought to the table early on. As he has done in these movies, there are some characters that he wakes up with a vision of in the middle of the night and comes to a meeting and says, I see these guys. I don't know how they fit into the story, but they're going to be animalistic, and it's going to be awesome if we use them in this car chase we're talking about. I just want these guys to be scary.
Decepticons, usually they're flying, they're some kind of spaceships or jet fighters, but now they brought them into vehicle mode.
And they don't exist in the Transformers mythology. That's a Michael Bay special.
We have a new arch villain in the movie under the name of Sentinel Prime.
Sentinel is kind of the key character for this movie. In my initial drafting of the story, I talked about this notion of finding in the mythology a father figure for Optimus, someone that he had apprenticed under. And there's not a lot about Sentinel Prime in the mythology, so I felt that it gave us a lot of license to take a character who existed in Transformers lore, but do something new with him. and do something surprising with him, and find an Autobot whose betrayal could really emotionally impact Optimus.
I always wanted somewhere in the Transformers universe to do what I would consider a proper kind of Gundam, L-game, Japanese knight warrior kind of robot, because it's such a huge, great library of influences out there to choose from. I said, I know this is not going to fly. I'm just going to do it because I want to see how much of a, a slightly more traditional, cleaner design I can sneak in. And to my surprise, it actually went through. Ultimately, it had to be articulated into a more transformery language, but the basic shapes and gestures ended up largely kind of as clean as I had originally sketched them. It got articulated with extra sort of negative spaces and lots of mechanical parts and all that, but fundamentally there's some large contiguous flat surfaces on him that you ordinarily would never have made the cut, and I was happily surprised to see that it did. Some of the experiments we did where the face mask was extremely clean looking and sort of techie looking, I actually really like those, but I think, when you think of him as an older character, and obviously he has a huge story component and there's history behind him and all that, the decision to go with a more wizened and ultimately obviously a little bit piratey look was probably the appropriate way to go.
He needed to be something as big, if not bigger, than Optimus. And there was something about the fire truck that suggested ability, coming to the rescue, being on the side of right, that could subvert, our true designs with him. And Michael found a really cool looking fire truck. I wrote the script all the way up until we started shooting for the Michaela Baines character, with the assumption that Megan Fox was going to play that part again. She was in rehearsals a few weeks before we started shooting. And then, for one reason or another, it just became clear that it wasn't going to work out.
I had not seen Megan for about 8 months or so since Transformers 2, and when I saw her, she just didn't look like Michaela. It was just, I guess Hollywood sometimes has a way of casting a spell on women that they have to change their look, change how their appearance, I guess, to satisfy something. I'm not sure, but Megan's a stunningly beautiful woman, and we decided to go our own ways.
I guess we were all hoping that the family didn't break up, but it did. And we just kind of had to pick up the pieces and keep going,
It was difficult because we were a week away from shooting, and then we were a week into shooting, and we kept moving the Michaela stuff later and later.
We decided basically right away that we weren't going to throw out the rest of the plot of the movie and come up with a new plot that involved a new female love interest for Sam, but that we would maintain the idea that he was going to experience this adventure with a girlfriend character, and it would just need to be a new girlfriend.
Michael sent me a text message saying, you should really go to the audition for Transformers, and I assumed it would just be a small part in the movie, just a walk-on part.
Rosie came in. I think it was 400 or 500 women that auditioned. There was a spark about Rosie that I really liked, and she, said hello, good morning, thank you to the crew. My crew very much appreciated it, so it was a breath of fresh air.
A few more emails went back and forth from me and Michael, and I honestly thought he was joking. He was sort of like, you were good, and this movie might be coming your way. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then there was a couple of phone calls, and then it was like, okay, this could be going somewhere. And still I was unaware of the of the part.
With the audition, it was a serious audition. It was. She did multiple auditions in New York, and then we just put her with Shia, with the full crew, with the full set, and we put her through the paces.
It's just not fair, I feel like I'm not working with the Autobots. I feel worthless.
Well, getting a good job's hard for everyone, Don't go into that little dark place that you go to.
I'm in a dark place.
You are. Place that
Hard
you
for
go
everyone.
to.
How many interviews did it take you?
It took me one.
That's what I mean.
Well, one of us has got to work.
I would like to work.
You would?
Yeah.
Well, then get off your ass and go get a job.
I'm in the midst.
I was at home on the weekend watching this test, and I asked my wife to come over and watch it. And her reaction was, I want to watch her more. And that's a chemistry thing. That's not an acting thing. You can teach a person to act. You can't teach a person that. You either have that or you don't have that. It's a magnetism, it's an energy, it's something that makes you go, I want to watch some more of that. And when you see somebody who's never acted and they can project that, you know you got something special.
Michael called me the next day, and then it was like, okay, right, you're in.
What it did do is it opened up some story possibilities that didn't exist with the Michaela character.
Over the 2 movies, the Shia-Megan relationship had progressed quite far, and it was going to progress a little bit more if Megan had been in the movie. But the truth is we got to restart in a way, and it brings a freshness and vitality that really serves the story and Shia's character and her character, and it's an unexpected thing that we've witnessed. I think it was Sidney Pollack who once said, it's great to watch people falling in love, but it's really boring when they're in love. And I never quite understood that quote until I saw this happen, which was, wow, there's a whole nother level of energy and excitement that has been brought to the project that is reminiscent of the first movie.
I think that change is always good, and though it is hard to let go of the past and choices that have become familiar, that sometimes it's okay to do new things and to go down a different road. So, you know, we certainly all wish Megan well in her ongoing career. It was time for us at this time, you know, to have a new choice, and Rosie has stepped in extremely well and is also beautiful and fun, and I think that the audience will respond to her in the same way that they did in the first 2 movies with Megan.